The Governing Principles of Ancient China is a compilation of selected texts from various ancient Chinese books on the matter of governing. It was compiled in the Tang dynasty by Wei Jian, a well-known prime minister, along with various political and academic figures of the time. These men were appointed by Emperor Taizong to select texts from the past to serve as political references to help him focus on bringing peace to his nation and his people. What is the significance of the collection of ancient texts to the current world? Here, from Yu Liu's lecture series on the encyclopedic work, The Governing Principles of Ancient China, is the section, What is the Governing Principles of Ancient China? Professor Yu Liu graduated with a bachelor's and master's degree in philosophy from Renmin University of China. She is currently a professor at the Department of Philosophy at the Party School of Central Committee of CPC and a mentor for doctoral students majoring in ethics. She is also a visiting professor at Tsinghua College, Sun Yat-sen University. Professor Yu Liu has published many academic papers, received a PhD from the University of Hull, UK, and is a postdoctoral scholar at the National University of Singapore. She has been invited to give lectures and participate in workshop seminars in the UK, Italy, the USA, Canada, Australia, Japan, Singapore and Indonesia. In 2015, 2016 and 2017, she was invited to UNESCO headquarters in Paris to give talks based on the governing principles of ancient China. The central theme of her talks was the importance of the sage's education. In other words, learning from the wisdom of the past and also how to promote moral education. She has contributed greatly towards the dissemination of Oriental culture in the Western world. This video was edited by the Governing Principles of Ancient China translation team of the Pure Land Learning College Association and is based on the lectures by Professor Yu Liu.
Greetings everyone. I'm happy to be here today to talk about the Governing Principles of Ancient China. It is a set of books compiled by ministers Wei Zheng and others under the imperial order of the Emperor Taizong. Taizong lived between 599 and 649 CE at the beginning of the Zhenguan era of the Tang dynasty. During the Tang dynasty, the emperor appointed several great ministers to select texts from classical and historical books to bring together the essence of the teachings on how to cultivate oneself and manage a family, as well as govern a nation peacefully. This compilation serves as the foundation and basis for rule during the era known as the Great Governance of Zhenguan era of China, which was known for its economic, cultural and military prosperity. To understand the governing principles of ancient China, let's start with its content. The compilation itself contains the essence of many important classics on the topics of self-cultivation, family, government, and how to contribute to a peaceful world. The benefit from studying this compilation would be to learn and master these experiences, methods, and pearls of wisdom in the manner of how it was done in traditional China. In doing so, we are studying traditional Chinese culture and showing appreciation for the works of great ministers of the time. These ministers had the wisdom to govern the nation peacefully, and they made the effort to compile this set of books to inspire future leaders to approach governance in a similar way. The compilation itself draws on sources from 65 classical books totalling 14,000 volumes. That adds up to 89,000 scrolls. Of these 65 books, the most important and relevant texts were selected and compiled to create the governing principles of ancient China. This includes the 5 classics, the front 4 history books, and the books and articles from the 100 Schools of Thought. The 5 classics initially were the 6 classics, namely the Book of Odes, the Book of Documents, the Book of Rites, the Book of Music, the Book of Changes, and the Spring and Autumn Annals. However, the Book of Music was later lost. Thus, the 6 classics became the 5 classics. The sources also came from history books, such as records of the Grand Historian, the Book of Han, the Book of Later Han, records of the 3 Kingdoms, and the Book of Jin. The sources from the 100 Schools of Thought include Confucianism, Mohism, Taoism, legalism, agriculturalism, and the military school. From studying this compilation, one can become familiar with the essence of the complete library in 4 branches of literature. After we understand the content of this compilation, people may ask why Emperor Taizong made it a royal order to compile such a huge but significant project. To answer this question, let's get to know Emperor Taizong first. Emperor Taizong was the 2nd son of Emperor Gaozu, who was the first emperor of the Tang dynasty, which went from 618 to 626 CE. According to historical documents, Li Shimin was born under the auspicious signs of 2 dragons flying and playing over the dwelling where he was born. When Li Shimin was 4 years old, a scholar visited his father. Upon seeing the young boy, the scholar praised his extraordinary appearance and posture, which indicated that he would be a potential ruler and the emperor in the future. Li Shimin joined the army at age 16. In 626, he succeeded his father as Emperor Taizong, 2nd emperor of the Tang dynasty, at age 27. On ascending the throne, he reflected that he did not have the knowledge nor experience to govern a nation. Despite this, he was open to acknowledging his limitations and willing to learn. A chapter entitled Discussion on the System of Governance from the Essentials of Governance in the Zhen Guan reign gives us a glimpse into Li Shimin as a conscientious and modest emperor. He once said to his minister, Xiao Yu, "I have liked bows and arrows since I was young. I thought I knew how to tell a good bow from an ordinary one. Lately I have obtained dozens of them, and I inquired of an expert craftsman who made bows and arrows. This expert told me these bows are good but not great. I inquired further and he said, the grain of the wood used is not straight. As such, despite the strong force a bow could sustain, it could not shoot in a direct line. That is why it is not a great bow." From this incident, I understood that despite the fact that I conquered the whole country with bows and arrows, and I have used countless bows and arrows, I am not truly an expert on them, as I don't even know how to tell a good bow from an ordinary one. I have not grasped the essence yet. Likewise, I am not a person with any more knowledge in governing a country than I am with bows and arrows. I would have to say that I know even less about how to govern a country. After this event, Emperor Taizong routinely summoned government officials to his court and inquired about news outside the court. He would ask about the livelihood of his people and the effectiveness of his rule. He was a modest man and accepted what he did not know. He also wanted to learn from more experienced ministers and treated them well and with great respect. He asked one of his officials called Wang Gui, "The recent emperors and ministers were not good at governing the country like those in the ancient times. What is the reason?" To this, Wang Gui replied, "When the ancient emperors governed the country, they governed with the principles of non-action. With purity in their heart, they held little selfish desires. Instead, the people were always in their hearts and minds. Yet recent emperors satisfy their own greed at the expense of their people. When they appoint ministers, they do not look to well-learned scholars. The prime ministers in the prosperous Han dynasty were all well-learned scholars, and they were experts on the classics. When asked by the emperor, they would have historical support to their answers. They also relied on the classic texts to determine the nature of things. Each of these ministers were men of propriety, and they helped govern the country with propriety. That was why there was peace and stability. However, in recent times, more and more importance has been attached to the military and severe penalties in order to govern a country. The result is that Confucianism is no longer regarded as important, and the honesty and simplicity of the people no longer exists. Upon hearing this, Emperor Taizong agreed and would go on to promote Confucian officials and entrust them with important positions and work with them to govern the country. Emperor Taizong was wise in his approach. Where other rulers aimed to achieve results through law and punishment, they failed in the areas of morality and ethics. Unlike them, Emperor Taizong advocated the study of morality and ethics in addition to the rule of law. His emphasis on Confucian teachings in the government laid the groundwork for the achievements during his reign. In the book Discourse on Salt and Iron, in the Governing Principles of Ancient China, one reads, "Law can punish people, but cannot make them honest. Laws can execute people, but cannot make them benevolent." Said differently, laws can punish a criminal, but they cannot make a person honest, kind and compassionate. This is why when the ancient Chinese established law, they also stressed the importance of moral and ethical education. Laws could deter a person from committing crimes, but morality and ethics would deter a person from even considering it. Shortly after ascending the throne, Emperor Taizong decreed that the governing principles of ancient China be compiled. He was mindful of his own inexperience with governance at the time, but also had confidence in the teachings of ancient sages. He wanted to learn from his ministers and have access to these teachings. His ministers and senior court officials selected historical materials on governance ranging over thousands of years and took 5 years to compile their work. Upon completion of their work, the emperor's minister, Wei Zhang, wrote the following foreword. "When used for the present, it is enough to learn from the past. When passing down to the future, it is beneficial to the descendants." The governing principles of ancient China draws on the knowledge and wisdom of the past and can apply to modern governments today to help politicians and leaders learn from the past to avoid making mistakes in the future. In turn, this benefits not only the people of today, but also people of future generations. This potential can apply to all areas of life, including health, happiness, and family and social well-being. After the governing principles of ancient China was completed, Emperor Taizong was pleased. It was a vast compilation of topics on governance from various texts, and he read it every day. He loved and cared about his people, and this motivated him. He wanted to govern well so his people could live well. He also wanted his nation to serve as a role model for other nations.
For the governing principles of ancient China to exist, a great deal of planning and work needed to go into it. It depended on Emperor Taizong's appreciation for learning and education. It also needed him to have self-awareness of his limitations and inexperience as a ruler when he ascended the throne. After discussions with his ministers, he pursued the project to compile a set of books based on experiences from the past that he could access at any time. His ministers and scholars extracted excerpts from 65 various texts to compile an encyclopedic set of volumes that would address the principles of political thought and governance. After many years of hard work, the end results not only addressed how to govern a nation, but also on how to manage a family and cultivate oneself. Encapsulated within 50 volumes, The Governing Principles of Ancient China is relatively concise given the depth and breadth of the subject and sources it draws from. It provided guidance to Emperor Taizong at the time when he needed it. How well did Emperor Taizong govern China? Did the Governing Principles of Ancient China help? Let us continue with lectures on the Governing Principles of Ancient China. What is the Governing Principles of Ancient China?
Emperor Taizong ascended the throne in 626 and died in 649 after a 23-year rule. Historically, he is regarded as a wise ruler, with some historians claiming he was the emperor of the millennium. With the governing principles of ancient China to guide him, Emperor Taizong was known for promoting talented individuals, listening to advice, respecting the teachings of Confucius and Taoism, and loving his people. He ruled the nation through literature and advocated frugality so that his people could flourish. The country itself saw prosperity and stability and became known as the historic Great Governance of Zhenguan era. This laid the foundation for prosperity in China for the next 100 years. When we examine this prosperous Great Governance of Zhenguan era, we can appreciate three characteristics. First, there was great development in agriculture. Food was in abundance in the 6th and 7th year of the Zhenguan era. The country experienced great weather and successful harvests. When people travelled, they didn't need to bring dried food with them. That they could simply buy food along the way was not previously observed in previous dynasties. When travellers entered villages, they would be treated to abundant food. When they departed, they would even be offered food for the next leg of their journey. In the 8th and 9th years, as well as 13th and 16th years of the era, the harvests were also successful. As a result, one can imagine the prosperity of this time. Second, there was social order. In the 4th year of the Zhenguan era, around 630, in the whole country, only 29 people were sentenced to death. In the 6th year of the Zhenguan era, that number rose to 290. At the end of that year, Emperor Taizong allowed them temporary leave to return home to settle their affairs before their death. When their sentence was supposed to be carried out the following autumn, all 290 prisoners returned, not one escaped. One can entertain the possibility that these prisoners acknowledged shame, that they had committed wrongs and accepted their punishment. Even in the face of death, they remained honest. Third, the Zhenguan era was the only time in Chinese history that saw little to no corruption. This could be seen as perhaps the greatest political achievement during the time of Emperor Taizong's rule. He ruled by example and advocated frugality. As a result, officials across the country performed their duties with little or no abuse of power, corruption and misconduct. As the emperor held himself to high moral standards, officials followed suit, which had a significant positive effect on the government as a whole. The governing principles of ancient China served as a resource for Emperor Taizong on how the methods of the sages were used to govern a country. He implemented them with good effect, resulting in swift changes. The compilation was also introduced to Japan during the Tang Dynasty, where it was well received and also implemented effectively, with Japan seeing a period of good governance. Today, the governing principles of ancient China is a treasure. For hundreds of years afterwards, even into the Qing dynasty, the governing principles of ancient China would be among the tributes that the Japanese paid to the imperial court as a sign of respect to the text. Unfortunately, because engraved printing technology during the Tang dynasty was not advanced, only a small number of sets had been copied by hand. As a result, it is not as well known as later political classics. Additionally, due to war and various other circumstances, the governing principles lost attention and fell into storage and disuse.
Professor Liu described the positive influence of the governing principles of ancient China on China during Emperor Taizong's reign. The emperor held the teachings of Confucius and Taoism in high regard. He himself exercised self-restraint and both loved and respected his people. He received advice with modesty, supported the nation's agriculture and economy, encouraged frugality, revitalized education, and limited revolts and border disputes. By the end of his reign, he had laid the groundwork and foundation for prosperity in China that would last the next 100 years. After the governing principles was completed, it was brought to Japan by envoys from China and helped to positively influence governing in Japan at that time. Even to this day, it contains wisdom that remains valid and effective for modern society. Let us continue with lectures on the governing principles of ancient China. What is the governing principles of ancient China?
People may wonder what purpose such an extensive body of work compiled over 1,000 years ago may have on the subject of governance. Dr. Arnold Toynbee, a famous British historian, studied the development of civilization across the world and concluded that the 21st century and its social problems would need to rely on traditional Chinese culture. In the book, The Future Belongs to China, Dr. Toynbee states that he felt that the 21st century would be influenced by China due to its culture and not because of economics or military power. In other words, the promotion of its culture has the potential to bring about peace. From the governing principles of ancient China, it explains that he who is benevolent has no enemies, and harmony can overcome differences. China itself is an example, being home to 56 different ethnic groups of various faiths and beliefs. Despite their differences, China has endured in its effort to remain united based on the foundation of traditional Chinese culture. Chinese President Xi Jinping once said, "History is the best teacher." In its long history, the Chinese people have created a distinct culture and accumulated a wealth of experience on governing a nation, both success in peace and prosperity, as well as harsh lessons from periods of war and strife. The events and circumstances of the present can find similarities in the past. Likewise, the past can be used to reflect on the present. The present evolved from the past. In order to have effective leadership today, we can look to the past and seek inspiration and examples from traditional Chinese culture. President Xi Jinping shared his belief that it is important to learn and understand history. The past can reveal the reason for successful governments and reveal the cause for failures and the fall of dynasties. Both can play a role in guiding how to approach leadership today. For modern leaders, the chance to study the governing principles of ancient China is an opportunity to understand what leadership qualities made an excellent leader in the past and how it can apply to being a great leader today. The qualities that make an excellent leader include not only integrity, quality and capability, but also a leader's ability to observe, identify and recruit talented individuals and then utilise their potential. These important qualities can determine whether a leader surrounds him or herself with a loyal and effective team or with incompetent persons. The principles that apply to governing a country will also apply to the successful management of a business or corporation. Good leadership is good leadership, regardless of its form or shape. One should be honest and not deceptive. One should promote the development of integrity and be uncompromising on morality and ethics while avoiding corruption.
Professor Liu quotes Dr. Toynbee's words that traditional Chinese culture can save the world. President Xi Jinping cited history as the best teacher. Both Dr. Toynbee and President Xi Jinping point towards the governing principles of ancient China as a reference work filled with experience and wisdom passed down over the course of history. It reveals the wisdom of the past and how it can be valuable to people today. It can be used to solve current problems, resolve disputes between nations, and bring peace to society. Likewise, the individual person can take its contents and apply it for the betterment of his or her own life. The opening sentence in The Great Learning says that the way of great learning is to enlighten and benefit oneself and others. The goal of studying the governing principles of ancient China is to help achieve good health, happiness and harmony in order to bring peace to one's family, society and the world.